Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Cinnamon Chat with Amita. Today it is the 29th episode. I have been running this show for 29 weeks, except for the Sinhala Urdu week where we didn't run the show. Everybody was on holiday mode. Other than that, for last 29 weeks, I've been running this with 29 different experts. So today we have a very special expert on a particular subject. But before we talk about today's guest, let me talk about myself a little bit more. As you know, my name is Amita Gamage, and I'm an executive coach. I love coaching CEOs. I'm a personal branding strategist, a LinkedIn marketer, and also I help organizations achieve their B2B sales by working with their sales staff. And why this show? When I originally got LinkedIn Live feature, probably as the first or the second person in the country, I was looking for ways to add value to my network. And then I started bringing an expert here. And we welcome everyone from LinkedIn and from Facebook, and some may join from YouTube. So today, we need to talk about financial industry, especially if you look at the last 1 year, especially with the pandemic. I think one of the industry that went through a huge transformation is financial and banking industry. So to talk about what's going on and what will happen in the future, I invited a veteran in the industry, someone who has done a lot of, who has contributed to a lot of changes, especially to this transformation. So let me invite Kanishka Veeramunda. Good evening, Kanishka.
Hi, Amita.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining the show. Apparently, you are the founder of Direct Pay and Pay Media. Of course, I'm going to dig into your personal and professional life a little bit more during the show.
Sure.
So let me get into the questions. But before that, there's someone who is joining. That's Tamit. Hi, Tamit. Thank you very much for joining the show. He's our regular visitor who is encouraging me all the time. Thank you. Then we have Nishamini. Hi, Nishamini. Good evening. So let me throw the first question to you. First one is, as always, let's talk about a little bit about your childhood, your school time, little bit about your higher education to start with.
Right. Samita, first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me for this show. And if you take me back to my school age, I studied at Maristella College, Nigambu, which is a bit of like an outskirt of Colombo. And from Maristella, I basically did my first degree with the University of Colombo in Bachelor of IT. So that's where I first get into this field of information technology. From there onwards, I have been doing various other disciplines of education. I was into management by doing the MBA at Manipal University. Then I also did a bit of a different type of educational course into manufacturing management, again back at University of Colombo, and also to strategic HR. And currently, I'm reading for my doctorate in business administration. So that's where basically I can tell about my track record.
Wow, that's interesting. At your age, you are an entrepreneur now. This is also an inspiration for the younger generation. You have to keep on learning; it never ends.
Yes.
Yeah? Yes. So thank you very much. So once when you finished your education, I believe. Did you move into the corporate world or what? What happened?
Amit, actually, before going into the corporate world, I first did a startup, right? But actual stories at the time I did that, I never knew that it was a startup or I had an entrepreneurial interest in my life, right?
Okay.
So it was an accident story. I'll share you the story very quickly.
Please. Please.
So after A levels, I went and started a computer hardware course. And the instructor at that course, after about, I think, a couple of weeks, said, you can now go and tell your friends that you can assemble computers. So I took that opportunity and I went back. I was from Negombo. So I went back to my friends, my teachers, and basically spread the word. And I basically got a couple of orders and started assembling computers. So that was my first I would say venture in terms of getting.
What was your age at that time?
I was 19, just after my A levels.
Wow.
So, you know, when we were doing A levels, we had a bigger gap between the results and the exam. So that was the time I started my first venture.
Wow. So you have become an entrepreneur even before you entered the university.
Yes.
Okay. So then I'm sure your university life also must have been little different than others, or was it an ordinary university life?
To speak about university, so this is one of the things that I wanted to also share. I was not fortunate enough to get through A levels and get into Columbia University. But Columbia University at that time launched a course for external students called Bachelor of Information Technology. Right? So I was in the very first batch of that. So that's where my university career started. So it was a blessing on me because I never had to go to university classes because it was conducted externally. So I had the entire freedom of to do whatever I wanted to do. So that gave me a lot of room in terms of developing my business also, and then to continue with my studies.
All right. Interesting. Let us say hi to not few, a lot who has joined us. So we have Maria, looking forward to the chat. Dilun, hi Dilun, thank you for joining. We have Krishan, looks like he knows you. Hi Krishan. We have Sandun. Hi Sandun. We have Shri. Hi Amita and Kanishka. Hi Sri, thank you very much for joining. And okay, Nishamini says good evening to both of us. We have Eranga. Hi Eranga. Then we have Maheshika. We have Dinuka. We have Kitmini. This is exciting. Kitmini asked a lot of questions, okay? We also have Sahan. Mr. Veeramun is an absolute star. Great having him on the show. Wow, thank you very much. We have Malisha Robinson. Prashantan, I think you are joining from Jaffna. We have Callum. We have Vimukti. Vimukti, are you joining from Singapore? Just say from where you are joining. Mahendran, looks like I will not be able to ask a lot of questions from you. Okay, we have Tarindra, who was on the show. Hi, Tarindra. Thank you very much for joining. And then we have Gayan as well. Yeah, so now let me go to the next question. So, a little bit about your corporate life. Then, I mean, I know you were in the corporate life, but I never knew that you had an entrepreneurial journey before that. Wait a minute, one more thing. So, Robinson is joining from Jaffna. Thank you very much. Yes, can we? You want to answer that? Your corporate life?
Yeah. So I want to tell you the first the reason why I had to join corporate world. Right now, Amita, when I was doing A level, and I think probably it might be the same for you, right? When you go and tell our parents that we wanted to do a business, right? What they put us on is the Mudalali hat. So the various type of issues comes when we are to give you a marriage. What are we going to tell that our son got educated for 18 years and now he's a Mudalali? So a lot of pressure comes from the home, right?
Yes.
That was the same thing that I faced, and I was pretty much forced from my parents to give up this so-called business and to get into a job. So that was the pressure that I had. Basically, I was really doing really well in terms of selling the boxes, but then I basically had to get into a
Close
job.
the shop.
Yes, close the shop. Even though I had done certain things part-time while I was working. So I first joined a company called Asian Cyber Market. So this company is a very remarkable company. They were the first web designing company in Sri Lanka. Right? I think they sold a website to Maharaja, just 3 pages for a huge sum of value. Right? So that was, I think it was 2000. Right? So that was my first job. Onwards, I've been working in multiple organizations. So I think I've moved from there to another venture, which was the second startup. So that's also an interesting story that I want to share. So I was working there and I got an offer from Selinco. Selinco had a company called Akasa Kade. Right? So they offered me a job. And on a Friday, that was my last day, and I was to join next Monday to Selinco. So while I was basically finishing my old work, one of the customers said he has an exhibition that night for me to come and assist him to do a presentation. So I went to present him and everything. And after it was about 10 o'clock in the night. And he said, I need to drop you because you came up from this whole workshop. While we were given, I said, this person is Shrimal Hinatigala. So I told him, Shrimal, today is my last day. And from next Monday, I'm joining Selinco. So it was a 45-minute drive. And in that 45 minutes, the conversation went up and he offered me said, Kanishka, I don't want you to go and join Selinco. You come and join me, we'll start a business. So before I got down from the vehicle, I had to make a decision to go ahead with my second venture. On Monday, I informed Selinco.
You had only 45 minutes to think.
Yes, on the 45 minutes, I basically made that choice of starting my second venture with Shrimal Hinatigala.
Okay, interesting. That's your second startup.
Yes, so we basically did certain work for apparel sector. Most of the leading garments, we did catalog selling basically. It was a good venture, but we had various other challenges in terms of the continuity of business. And we at one point we thought that we'll depart. Right? Then that is my second basically search for a corporate world job. And at also, there's a nice story about it. While we were working on that particular company, the company was known as Global Cyberworks. We did some work for Asian Alliance Insurance. There was a particular program to be done for insurance retention calculation. And I was asked to do that, and we did and completed. And I went to hand over the invoice. So the CEO of that company asked me a question which I did not understand. He asked me and said, do you want, it was a 50,000 invoice, do you want this 50,000 every month or as a one-off payment? I got actually excited and I told him, no, sir, this is for the work I have done. That's it, there is no monthly payment involved. Then he was laughing and saying, no, actually, we wanted to offer you a position at our company because this particular work you have done is excellent. So we want you to join. So anyway, parallelly, I also decided to leave or depart from Shrimal's organization. So I took the offer and joined Asian Alliance as a software engineer. So that's where my second corporate venture started.
So your luck was on your side, the jobs were coming behind you.
I would say to a great extent, yes. Even my third exit, even I was in Asian Alliance, But when you have this entrepreneurship within you, time is not a factor. You tend to do extra work and you tend to run another parallel show while you're running your main job. So I was doing here and there ad hoc work. I was basically doing certain web designing and stuff. And one day I met a gentleman who gave me a floppy disk and said, I want to design a website. Everything what you need is in this floppy disk. Right? That's it. He asked me how much you want. I just said that it's about 20,000. He gave me 15,000
Then
in
and there.
advance. Nothing then and there, and said, you take 10,000 and give 5,000 to the guy who introduced you.
Okay.
Right? Took this thing. After about a couple of days, I went back with the floppy disk. Those days we didn't have pen drives. It was floppy disk,
Yes.
and he took the floppy disk and said, "So this is your website." And he took it. He went through it and he said, "Okay, how much I need to pay?" Then I said, "You gave me 15,000. Now, okay, there's another 15,000. You take your 10,000 and pay the balance 10,000 to the other guy because he also needs to get your commission." So one day he walked into Asian Alliance and said, we had been doing some work close to them after that. Walked into Asian Alliance and said, Kanesh, I want to meet you. So I said, yes, sir, what can I do? I want you to quit. Right? I want you to quit, and I'm going to invest on you and my son to start a startup. I mean, there was no word of startup, it was to start a business. And can you join?
Yes.
So he also gave a little bit of thought and said it was a very quick decision. I said, okay, let's do it. So that was my, I would say, the second exit from the corporate world.
But your third startup.
Third startup.
Okay.
And that went really well. We did for a couple of good brands like Browns, Abans, a lot of good brands. So we were doing it. Even MAs, we were doing certain work for them. And but the whole challenge was this person's son. He wanted to migrate, so he was trying his best to migrate. The parents were keeping him down by investing into the company. So he called me up and said, "Look, this is the deal. You take this company. This is my agenda." So with that, we basically departed on the third venture.
Okay.
So then I was back into corporate world. I then migrated, or rather, I applied for a job in Dubai, and I got the job, and I joined a company in Dubai. So from there onwards, I was back in the corporate world. Even though in Dubai, I was doing some little bit of work here and there, but much of less, it's more or less corporate work. So did certain, I would say, good achievements because I joined there as a IT executive, and within 3 months I got promoted as head of IT. And again, in about 1.5 years, I got promoted as head of logistics. Now you'd wonder, how did the IT person become logistics?
I don't know.
This company.
Did you move boxes or what?
Exactly. That's what I did. Right. So what happened, Namita, was this company is the 4th largest retail company in Middle East. They have 13 countries. Right. So what I did was I completely digitized the warehouse. So warehouse completely runs on technology. Right. Every carton which comes, when they pack it in China itself, there is a barcode. Moment you scan, we have the complete logistics worked out. So eventually, I became the head of logistics. Yeah. So then, then I was basically headhunted by Laughs Holdings. I met Mr. Vagapiti and Tilak in Dubai. I never knew that they came actually for an interview to interview me. So one of my colleagues who was there said the Laugh chairman and MD is here. They wanted to meet you. So I hosted them for a dinner. And at the end of the dinner, they said, we actually came looking for you. We want to hire you. And you have to come back, and we want some transformation to be done in Laughs. So they offered me, and I took that off and came back. So that's where my corporate
Some
career.
people are really lucky. Yeah? Some people are really lucky. Okay. So then what happened?
Yeah.
Moving
So
on.
So I came in 2011 to Sri Lanka, joined as the group CIO for Laugh Holdings. Did quite a lot of innovative things. I was instrumental of getting the ERP rolled out for Laughs group. Did decentralization of IT, all that work. But towards the latter part, I also wanted to do something which could, as Laughs brand, to touch every household. So that was one of the visions of Mr. Vagapiti also. When he met me first, he said, I want Laughs to be a household brand name. We only have gas. About that time, it was about 30% of the market share. But I want something else, right? So with that vision, I basically looked at every household's requirement, a common requirement. So one of the common requirement was the bill payments, because you have these either Dialog Go, Etisalat or SLT bill to be paid, and water, electricity is there. So we came up with this bill payment switch, right? So that was one of the projects we did roll out at Laughs. And we had a machine where people could go and do self-payments, right? So one of the directors from Sampath Bank has seen this, and they had called Mr. Vagapiti and had said, we would like to know who is behind this. Then he has said, Kanishka is the person. I don't know anything about this. You have to basically ask him how it is being done. So we got a call from Sampath Bank. I also knew Mr. Ajit Salgad, who was the CIO at Sampath Bank. He called up and said, look, this is the deal. Can your machine get converted to accept deposit for a savings account? That was the first thing, right? So we had to do a little bit of retweaking in our business model, and then basically plug it to a core banking system. Fortunately, I have decided to move out from Laughs, and this opportunity also came. And I went to Mr. Tilak and asked him, and he said, look, if you are not going to continue in this company, we have no big interest of continuing this business. If you are going, please take this and make it your own venture. Our blessing is there. So that's where I first took out that concept from Laughs and started with Sampath Bank as Pay Media. Actually, there is a story behind the Pay Media also. So we went out from Laughs and started the project with Sampath Bank. When Sampath Bank wanted to write the check, they asked, what is the company name? Right? So we were scratching our heads. Previously, I had a company called Green Media, right? So this is payment related, no? So we thought, okay, let's have it as Pay Media. And we gave the name as Pay Media. Sampath Bank wrote the check as Pay Media Private Limited. Now we realized, shit, now we can't deposit this check. After the check only, we actually registered the company as Pay Media Private Limited to get the check.
So this is what entrepreneurs do. They first jump, and then halfway through they figure out what to do, and then this is how it happens. Now exactly. I can see your entry into financial industry with those few moves. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add up to that point? So if you look at the if you look at the first few ventures, they have been kind of discontinued.
Yes.
And lessons learned.
Yeah. So if you really look at in a bit of a holistic view, my first 3 startups at a row has failed, even though it was by partially corporate world and a startup, but 3 startups has failed, right? So the 4th startup, the best, I would say the best foundation was the lessons learned of those 3 areas. So that's where, Amita, I was basically, I would say to a certain extent, I knew the art of failing, right? So you know, if you fail, how do you control the fail? because when I was basically failing on my second startup, it was a bit of a miserable failure. Didn't know what to do, right? But now you're matured enough. And also one more thing that I wanted to tell you, actually, this is an advice for most of people who want to do a startup.
Yeah.
If you're at the age of 20 or just after university, right, it's a good opportunity to work on a startup. But actually, if you don't have the contacts, it might not take you anywhere, right? If you come from a normal traditional family, right, it's very challenging if you don't have the right contacts to make it somewhere, right? You have different cases in Sri Lanka. You have success stories who has just done their A levels and started, but they all had certain amount of backing, right? So that's why I currently I help certain startups in our portfolio because of this particular challenge that I faced.
Yes. Networking is very important.
Networking is it is the key basically.
Okay. So so you entered the financial industry, and then it's been some time now. 2 ventures, a lot of startups you are helping. You are in the business now. So we'll get into today's real topic about the financial industry and the banking industry.
Yes.
Your journey is important because one should understand your journey. What is the connection between financial industry and you? So that was well explained. So before I go to the next question, let's say hello to few others. So Shantanu is joining from London. Hello, good evening to you both. And then we have Jayan. Hi, Jayan. Good evening. We have Ramit. Hi, Ramit. Thank you very much for joining. We also have Gayan. And then we also have Manoj joining us. Thank you very much for joining from wherever you are. Maybe some are joining from Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube as well. So my next question to you, Kanishka. The status of financial industry, I don't want to talk about today's status. Maybe you can talk up to the first wave or the pandemic,
Right.
the traditional era.
Okay. So I'll go a little bit further
Back.
Back, right?
Okay.
So when I started PayMedia, so I had 2 of my colleagues who had joined me, Dasun and Dinesh. So we were basically doing the first rollout of real-time cash deposit machines for Sampath Bank.
Yeah.
Right? So we all, including Sampath Banking, we all had an assumption, okay, this is going to be the next wave big thing where people are now going to interact on machine-to-machine technology. Where people will go to machine and machine will do the rest of the things.
Yeah.
So Sampath Bank also ordered 10 machines. We did the deployment, we did the technology, everything. We launched the machine. First, it was launched at Dharamapala Mawatha branch. Unfortunately, right, people don't go to the machine. They go to the machine, they look at the machine, go to the counter. Right? Huge problem. Right now, Sampath Bank is also under pressure because now they have invested almost about 12 million onto this project. Now there is no return.
Yes.
We wanted 100 transactions per day to break even. Right? Not even 10 is coming. Right? So we got some university undergraduates to be there and to train people. Slowly, it was picking up. Even though Sampath Bank imposed a penalty fee if you're going to the over-the-counter deposit, still people would go there. Right? While we were talking to some of the bank staff and the security, we figured out the security is much more interested than anybody else on this machine.
Okay.
Right? And we figured out they know the customer by their face, whether it's a cash carrying customer or a check deposit customer, or who is the customer.
Amazing.
Right? So we trained all the security staff. We gave, with the help of the bank, we got them trained. And then they became the expert of explaining it to the customers. And believe me, I think we have crossed more than 400 transactions at some locations per day.
So the security officers were helping to do a behavior modification on the customers.
Exactly, exactly. And these guys, even the customers do trust them because they know that when they enter the door, the security guy is the guy who is going to safeguard them.
Yes.
If that guy says, okay, this technology can help you, right? And some location, it became a bit of a demanding situation. Like if you take towns like Kiribati, Maharagama, it became demanding situations where after banking hours, people started using the machine, right? So we had various challenges. So the whole understanding was it took about 1.5 years for us to actually get people to use that machine. Now,
So
today,
for people to trust machines.
exactly. Now today, any bank, if you go a cash deposit machine, people would trust and do the deposit. Right?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that's the psychological the period where people would basically get adjusted to a machine.
So you were a pioneer in that when it comes to cash depositing.
Yes, yes. So we actually, I think the initial stage we did for almost all the private banks, the major banks, we were providing the technology. And it was a bit of groundbreaking. And Sampath Bank and us, we had also an agreement that for 1 year not to give the technology out. So being a tech entrepreneur, I can't say no to any other bank. No? So what we did was we did the parallel, all the projects with all the other banks, waited till that 1 year was over, and immediately next day everything went live.
Yeah, of course. Because customers are waiting to get that service. If you don't do it, they will get it from someone else.
Exactly. But I would like to recall and say it was genuinely Sampath Bank's support actually brought PayMedia to this level.
Yeah, and then it also has, that bank also has helped in the society to enable that transformation.
Yes, they have done. I mean, not only that project, many other projects we initiated with Sampath Bank, and that partnership has worked really well for a startup. We were at the startup stage, and it has helped us immensely.
Yeah. So then the consumers were getting coming back. Consumers were getting used to it.
Yes. So then what happened was we also saw that there were a lot of gaps between the market and the current banking at that time. So what we did was we came up with quite a lot of innovations, and we always went to, first was Sampath Bank, always we go, and even to other banks we started pitching this, right? So then what happened was, one of the things what we saw was cash circulation, right? In Sri Lanka, it's about 95%. Right? It's a 95% cash market, but no way, right?
I lost you for a few seconds, Kanishka.
It's almost 0%. Nobody carries cash.
Kanishka, could you repeat the last few sentences, please?
Right. Okay. So if you look at Sri Lanka is a 95% cash market. If you look at the countries like Norway, right, it's almost 0% cash. And also, if you take most of the countries, checks has been eliminated. Sri Lanka, we had quite a lot of checks, right? So we were thinking of how do we basically do an impactful change, right? So that is, we first came up with the concept of digital payments. We pitched to central bank. I should thank Mr. Kumaratunga, who is the Payments and Settlements Director. He gave us opportunity to come and pitch to central bank, but nothing happened, right? So for almost about 2 years, nothing happened. So that was going on. So everybody was talking about this fintech, right? But nothing happening, right? So banks were holding on to their legacy systems and the legacy protocols that banking was running on. Central bank was not doing anything in terms of getting fintechs introduced. And we had a big red tape. In Sri Lanka, you can't operate as a private operator without a license in banking.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There are a lot of things, and also some of the banks started promising fintech, saying that we would like to engage with you, but nothing happens. They
Yes.
always listen to the idea and they take you for a ride forever.
So
this
nobody
was
nobody wanted to make the first move.
First move, right? This was going on. So while there were about a couple of serious players who were trying to make something happen, but nothing happened. One fine day, right, central bank gave us a bit of a green light and said, look, we want you all to come forward and digitize assessment tax payment. Right? So I was also wondering, where did now all this time we were trying these traffic fine payments to all the other things? Assessment tax came into the picture. There was a project called e-local government, and that was supposed to be opened by the former president. So they wanted everything happen in an app. Now the digital requirement came.
Okay.
So central bank, there were 4 parties who were pitching about digital payments. All 4 parties, they called up and said, okay, this is the challenge. Can you solve it? Right? We will give you the complete support. So then only the legislation changes happened. And in that was, I think, 2017, 18, towards the end of 17, we started basically working on that. Right? Now the challenge is we have the app, we have the technology. Lanka Clear came into the picture. Now banks are not letting it go. Now banks, okay, the fintechs are going to do this. Is going to be a challenge, right? So we had a, I would say, quite a challenging battle. Sampath Bank again supported us, but unfortunately we could not go ahead with them. Then there was a new bank who was in the game, who also wanted to acquire transactions as customers. So that was Cargill's Bank. So they just got the license. And Cargill's Bank said, yes, why not? We will support you. And Cargill's Bank supported, I think at that time, all the fintechs were supported except LOLC. Everybody else was supported by Cargill's Bank to launch this technology and drive. Now, still again, people are not using it.
Yes.
Right? Because it's a 95% cash market. Now, if you look at it, if you really look at, you might go to Keels in Colombo and you will see hundreds of people doing transactions through card, right? That means somewhere in Anuradhapura or Hambantota, there is a POS machine which is idling for 1 week that will only do 1 transaction.
Yes.
Right? So that's the market we are in, right? So we had the app, and then banks also, central bank made it mandatory for the banks to get into digital technology. Some of the banks came in the early stage. One of the banks is NTB, launched FreeMe, and it was a very success story. I think FreeMe has contributed immensely to transform digital banking in this country. So that remark
taken to the grassroots level.
Yes, yes. So we started onboarding merchants, and that's where the digital era first step started. But I would like to tell you, it was a very successful failure.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
Very successful failure because no transactions, right? No transactions. I think even central bank, even though they gave the legislation support, they also realized, okay, this is not going to work out like this. So that's where we all faced into difficult situations. Right? Now, if you look at before COVID, we had certain amount of effort done with the banks and everything. So during COVID, central bank also realized, right? Now, this is just before the first wave.
Yeah.
When it was announced that something like a pandemic is heading, they also realized, and they all got geared up and said, okay, this is the right time. We should launch on digital payments.
Yeah.
That is where I would say the first starting point of digital payments started off. Right? Now, Amita, if you really look at compared with the world, right? Now we have a lot of other things being launched in other markets which we don't see in Sri Lanka. One of the trends which is happening right now is buy now, pay later, right? That's a product which still hasn't reached Sri Lanka because now most of the countries has looked at alternative mechanisms of credit valuation. Right now, we have a very famous mechanism of credit valuation called CRID.
Yep.
Right? So in the CRID report, you basically get a score whether you are a worthy person or not. Now, let's say Amit is really rich, right? But you put all your money under the pillow and you never bank, right? In CRID, you will get a 0 as your score.
Yes.
Right? You have to be somebody who is in the banking sector. So this education, I think, most of people doesn't have. We have a lot of people who does daily business but doesn't bank.
Yep.
Right? So we had a lot of challenges like that. So that's not seen in Sri Lanka. And then we also have, if you look at crowdfunding was not much happening in Sri Lanka. There were legislation reasons. Even though e-commerce, we talk about e-commerce, right? We have giants like Daraz, Takas, Wow.lk was there, right? We have Urban, right? Likewise. But before COVID, they were not contributing really well into the economy. If you look at e-commerce transactions or card-based transactions, was less than 1.5%. That was the whole Sri Lanka. The biggest challenge everybody was talking about PayPal, saying that PayPal is not coming to Sri Lanka. That is why, actually, to speak about e-commerce and PayPal, there's two different things. You have enough and more alternative ways to make payments. PayPal doesn't need to come to Sri Lanka to boom e-commerce. Right? So that's the
society has a different view sometimes.
Yes. Right. So that's where I think we started the pandemic coming up.
Yeah. So talking about pandemic, what happened during pandemic? I know what happened. But then, would you want to see at the back end in terms of finance industry, banking industry, what happened? Right. We were stuck with cash. We couldn't go to the bank. Vendors were unable to accept. Okay, I have only the card. I don't have the cash. I can't go to the bank. And vendors were not accepting cards. Not every vendor is, equipped with infrastructure. So, in terms of backend, what happened during the pandemic?
Okay, now in the pandemic we had these three shocks. No, we had the demand shock first, right? Everybody was panicking and trying to do panic buying. Then supply shock because suppliers could not supply according to the demand. Then the third shock came towards the end of the month, the financial shock, right? Now people, whatever the money they had, the instruments, credit cards too, if they want to pawn and take money, they took everything. Now, how are you going to repay, right? How are you going to repay your rent? How are you going to repay your vehicle loan, right? Loan installments, everything came up, right? That was a bit of a panic situation. And generally, when this kind of a crisis happens, the NPL, non-performing loan rate goes up, right? When an NPL rate goes up, banks also just get panicked, right?
Yep.
So even finance companies started recovering and all those things, right? So that was the same time. Now, lockdown was unexpected for that long period. And people who had cash now had started giving the cash. The first challenge they came up with was you can't go out to the ATM now.
Yes.
You can't withdraw new cash, right? And same time there were a lot of, I would say, news spread that through cash also this virus gets spread. That is what happened at Paliaguda and all that.
Yes.
So that was also going on, right? So all of a sudden we saw, so we as Direct Pay, now we have shifted, we started a digital payment company, we had IPG, and all of a sudden there was a huge boom, right? Now people were asking for POS machines, people were asking for IPG, right? So our company in that particular month, we had a month-on-month 40% growth from March to April.
Okay.
Right? And I think there was a huge amount of card transaction growth happening, right? So we also did certain innovations in terms of supporting micro merchants. On a note, I should tell you, there was a bakery called Hastagiri Bakery in Peta. So we gave them a solution to send a payment link and basically do bread selling through IPG. So this was a startup by Andrew and Fawaz, who did called Curve. They basically sold about 4 million worth of bread in the month of April, only digital.
Wow.
Right? So that transformation happened, right? And now for the fintechs, it was a bit of a benefit and this thing. We were working at a bit of a speed because our only survival is this, right?
Yes.
Now banks, they could not get that flexibility and get the account open and get the IPGs. So we had a bit of a good sale there and we supported all of these guys. So this was happening. And on the back end, now banks were trying to digitize. They were trying to get online KYC systems up, right? But the situation was such, most of these developments could not take place in the speed that they were expecting.
Yes.
Right. So if you really look at some of the banks who had already launched their digital journey were able to achieve some good results. Some really fell back. That was the but same time, our regulator also took the full opportunity. We should say that Payments and Settlements Department of Central Bank, they worked in full capacity and they pushed everybody saying, you have to go digital, you all have to launch apps, we have to comply with the Lanka QR, one unified QR code for everybody. So that push was taken place. So that's where the pandemic period, which basically gave a lot of opportunities for banks as well as finance companies.
Yeah, Kanishka, interesting. So now, pandemic was declining, the life was coming back to normalcy, and then suddenly, now we are talking about a third wave, and then again, next 3 days we will be on a somewhat a lockdown, and so are we going back? What are we going to do? So my question to you is, what should happen today in an ideal world from a Sri Lankan context? We don't want this to be like USA or UK or anything like that, but at least from a Sri Lankan point of view, what should be the ideal situation when it comes to financial industry?
Right. I think so. This gave us a good start in terms of basically getting into digital platforms, right? So if you really look at now, most of the banks and finance companies has planned, and they are some have already launched it, some are in the verge of launching it. So they are getting into digital platforms, right? Now, one of the key things is, all this time, if you talk to a banker, one of their KPIs is to get number of customers acquired to the bank. That means open up the account.
Yeah.
Right? In future, it's not going to happen, or it's not going to be a major KPI. Right? Now, there is no point, Amita, you go and opening up a bank account, but if you're not transacting.
Yes.
Right? So the future is going to be mostly on transaction acquiring. Who is going to be the winner? Who is going to acquire the most number of transactions?
Transactions. Okay.
Right? The customer can bank with anybody, but end of the day, the transaction acquirer is the winner, because most of the banking transactions, if you look at, customer is not paying. Merchant is the guy who's paying. So if the merchant is going to pay, so merchant has to be acquired and that money should flow in. So that's the transformation which will happen. And then also looking at the credit, alternative credit channels, right? So as I said, buy now, pay later is only one product, but the same kind of concepts can be used for evaluating a customer, right? Now, in there, what happens is we generally use technology, especially AI-based technology, in terms of understanding a customer. Now, the traditional way of understanding and basically evaluating a customer is you have a KYC form, which every account opening which you have to fill in, which is a very
Customer
cumbersome
declares.
process.
Customer has to
Declares.
declare.
Customer has to declare, and then after that, what happens is that goes into a file. There is no any postmortem happens on that, and then you basically go. And every time bank wants you to get a facility or something, you have to go and prove yourself again and again.
Yes.
Right? Now, the next wave which is going to happen is this is going to be digitized. Right? It's already happening now also. Once it is digitized, then what happens is customer have one KYC probably which could be shared among multiple banks. So let's say I walk into bank A and fill the KYC. When I go to bank B, I should be able to authorize bank B to obtain my KYC from bank A. So that's where now central bank also has given a green light to do a pilot project on blockchain to do this. So we have to move on to technologies like blockchain, where data could be decentrally parked but centrally accessed. So that's the next wave which we should look at as a country. Now, this should not stop at banking, right? Because your fraud, right, is not going to be only detected through banking.
Yes.
You have telcos, you have your insurance, you have various type of things. So
Yes.
now we also need to look at a model where we could warehouse all this data and run different types of algorithms, slice and dice, and understand the customer better, right? Because if you look at the matured markets, I don't think we have any markets which looks at the traditional CRIB kind of reports, credit verification bureau reports, right? It's basically, they look at your behavioral score.
Yeah.
They look at your, they track your way of typing, right? Keystroke analysis, right? Because if you're a person who tends to put your password 2-3 times, that is recorded and that is identified as your behavior. So if somebody comes and puts your password in 5 or 6 times, you can basically block that and ask whether this is the same customer. So there are mechanisms. Then we look at the social scoring.
Okay.
In social scoring, we look at your age, the location. Let's say, for example, there is a huge amount of fraud transactions happening from Kandy.
Particular
right?
location. Yeah, Kandy.
Today, if you are doing another transaction in Kandy, the transaction might be blocked because they want to re-verify whether it's the right transaction or not. Then we also look at the social scoring. That is the most modern thing. Whom you associate. Let's say I associate with Amit. So when I put my LinkedIn and Facebook, everything, Amit is tagged. Amit is really rich, right? If I fall into trouble, I can ask some money from Amit and basically cover up. So those kind of angles also need to be looked at. And also, especially now, yeah.
So I need to look at my network, right?
Yes, of course. Right? Okay. So that's where your entire network is going to be accessed. And also the predictive analysis. So that is basically, we can predict and tell what Amita needs next. Whether he needs to buy a new car, right? Let's say your designation change in LinkedIn, right? That's a source where we picked up and see, okay, so let's say you were appointed as a CEO of a company, right? Or the recent message went on with the appointment of lotteries board. I think I also congratulated you, right?
Yeah,
so
I know
when
it was
that
the
kind
wrong
of
person.
pops up, right? If the technology can pick it up and say this is the right Amita, then they should basically go around you and understand what kind of a car you had been driving and what should be the next car should be suggested. So that advertisement will not come to you actually. It will go to the car company saying, you can propose Amita this car, and the bank will give the facility to the car company for Amita to get the car.
Okay.
Right? So you don't know what is happening behind the scene.
Yeah, so Kanishka, I think we need European Union kind of privacy laws here now. Technology is going to go that far.
so that's the kind of the advantage right now we have. There is a data protection act, or rather a bill being discussed right now. I don't know whether it's yet passed or not. So that is pretty much common to the GDPR standards. Yeah, Mr. Jayantha Fernando is leading that. So if that comes, it will be a real challenge for all these fintechs, Right?
Yeah.
Until that comes, you can do wonders.
Interesting. So those are some of the things that should happen in an ideal world. So my next
Yes.
question is now, yes, in an ideal world that should happen. What are the challenges in fulfilling those requirements, even moving forward? I mean, this what you told me is just a flowery story, but
Yes.
in reality, we know things do not move at the speed that you want. What kind of
Yes.
challenges do you see?
See, until now, if you talk about 1.5 years back, technology itself was a challenge, right? Now, what has happened is technology has a lot of enablement for doing these kind of things, right? Now, regulatory challenges will be definitely there, right? Because if you are doing this alternative kind of scoring from the central bank itself, they should understand and they should approve, right? So that is some of the regulatory requirements. Now, even blockchain, it's a good initiative that central bank has taken. Cryptocurrency, it's something which is banned in Sri Lanka. There are reasons for that, right?
Yep.
So that is, I would say, the number one is the regulator. Number two is the present financial ecosystem players. That basically the category one is the banks and the category two is the finance companies, right? Finance companies might not have that much of impact, but the major banks, until they are ready to challenge themselves and change, right, this transformation cannot take place, right? Because now one of the things that these days, one of the hot topics that we also discuss in the startup world is basically banks financing startups, right?
Yeah.
If I go to a bank and say I'm doing a startup, they will laugh and send you home.
Yeah.
Right? Because our banking system has this collateral based lending.
Yes.
So it's not their mistake.
It's the regulation.
It's a regulation, right? So then what happens is they can't adjust to a new model. Now, even buy now, pay later, I don't think it will take at least about next 2 years for banking to adjust, because buy now, pay later is basically on your demographic factors, your social scoring, and your transactional behavior. So these three, based on these three, a bank cannot take a risk.
True.
Right? So those kind of things has to change, right? Some of the banks has actually looked at certain changes. So one of the banks who is now doing a technology transformation is NSB and People's Bank. So those two banks have understood, as big banks, they have understood that this change need to happen, right? Then the other biggest challenges are merchant, right? So merchant network also needs to understand the benefit of this, right? Now, always that's a challenge being on the other side of the table. When you go and try to sell a technology, right? They basically think that the technology should come free of charge.
Yes.
Oh, it has a cost. So I'll give you a good example, right? Now, you go to Sunday market, let's say. Right?
Yes.
So the guy says brinjals 100 rupees, carrot 80 rupees, right? So generally, when you want to buy 2 kilos, you say, right? So dekak gannan adu kalla denna, right? You'll ask basically, can you basically reduce the price?
A little negotiation.
Little negotiation will happen, right? Because that guy is a small vendor.
Yeah.
You go to Cargill's or Keel's. Do
Go
you
to
go and
any
ask that girl,
supermarket.
can you? Yeah.
No, we never bargain.
No, you never bargain. There is no room for bargain, right? So that's again another cultural thing, the challenge, where always these corporates look at bargaining with startups, right? So those kind of challenges also has to be overcome. Otherwise, I think now it is it's very challenging to say this. I know that tomorrow morning I will have a lot of attacks on this, right? The banking era has ended now. It's going towards the end.
I wonder whether you said it little too early.
Now I think the fintech era is starting, and probably your kids For my kids will never want to go and see a bank branch. They would want to set it up everything on their own at home, right?
Yeah,
And
because they are studying at
transactions,
home. They are studying at home. They are paying from home. So I'm sure they wouldn't understand the concept of bank. There's a building, and then I have to go there. Why should I go there? Would be their question.
exactly,
Yeah. The
exactly.
school has come home.
Yeah. So bank has to come home. So that's where the future is
Yeah.
heading.
Yeah, I know. It was an interesting conversation right throughout. So we have come to the end of our conversation, but I have an interesting question to ask you. Now, all
Sure.
this is about up to date, but what about the future? Now, you just said
Right.
something about the banking point of view, but overall, where are we heading?
Right. So most of the time, Amita, in future, transactions will remain, right? So I think that's the key thing which we all need to understand, right? But around the transaction, the way we do transaction, the tools and the instruments we will be using to do transactions, everything will change. So I will basically give you a bit of a concept which we are also working. You would have probably heard about Alexa,
Yep, of course.
right? So just imagine one day morning when you get up, when you open the fridge, right? You see that your eggs are over, your milk is empty, and your butter is not there. You can talk to Alexa and say, Alexa, order eggs, butter, and bread. Alexa will pick your order, and Alexa will basically talk to the nearest retail outlet and ask, or rather, they will get from the system who has this inventory who can fulfill Amita's order. It will pop up in all the retailers' POS machines, like it pops up in today's Uber Eats and PickMe, right?
Yeah.
And whoever accepts it will basically prepare the order. And when they say confirm, the message will go to people who can deliver it around you, right? When the delivery guy accepts the order, right, Alexa will talk to you and say, Amita, the total bill value is 1,500, right?
So
Do you want me to?
I'll have to say, wait, I'll pick my credit card. Is it?
No, no. Everything is recorded with Alexa, and Alexa will ask you, do you want to do a bank transfer, or do you want to do a credit card payment or your debit card payment, right? So you choose whatever the payment mechanism. The transaction will be processed, right? What happens is, now delivery guy has already picked your order. He's on the way. When you make that payment, the payment will get splitted to the delivery guy and to the shop. The delivery guy, let's say he's charging 100 rupees. His 100 rupees will go to his account. And to the shop, he will not get the full 1,400. He will only get his margin. And the butter amount will either go to the butter distributor or to the butter company. The bread amount will go to the baker, and the eggs amount will go to the farmer, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
entire thing will be entire supply chain.
Entire supply chain will be looked after.
Entire supply chain will be looked after, right? And now what happens to the retail is it's going to be consignment basis. So the farmer is going and coming and keeping his eggs. The baker is coming and keeping the bread at the shop. So for you to start a retail shop, now you don't need to go behind a bank, or you don't need big money, because the entire supply chain is going to be on consignment basis. The moment transaction happens, it gets settled. So that's going to be the future.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a very difficult question for you. I don't know whether it will be a difficult question or not. For Sri Lanka to be there, how long would it take? I'm still wondering about checks, so where suppliers are given data checks to, why you want to hold on to checks, all the reasons. How long would it take? Maybe one day we can meet over a coffee and say, Amita, didn't I predict this?
I think, Amita, if we have about another 2 or 3 lockdowns, it will be near soon.
Oh, serious.
Because what happens is, in a lockdown, actually there is a lot of automation opportunity, right? I know that there are a lot of people, and I feel really sorry for people who has lost their jobs and who has affected. At the same time, if it is for financial technology, or we call it fintech companies, and for the financial industry, this is the right moment to rethink the entire model, including financing, lending, looking at the instruments, right? So we always had these POS machines carrying out, which is about 60,000 to 70,000, right? Now you don't need that much of a
investment
machine. You can send a form, right? Entire industry insurance sector has transformed on payment links, right? So that's basically the model that we need to think. And I think with the COVID, it would accelerate. But beyond that, I think probably about this future is not that far. I think 2023, 24, we should be somewhat there.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's a little scary for some people, but then for others, you can be very positive. Okay, it's going to happen. So
yeah, so the scary part comes, Amita, for you and me, but for the youngsters, it's not going to be a new normal, it's their normal.
Yeah, true enough, true enough. So Kanishka, thank you very much for joining with me today, and this is a very fruitful discussion, a lot to learn, and we always offer a book. I mean, we don't have a competition, but then for someone who has contributed in a very interesting way, we always give a book completely free of charge, courtesy of Pick-a-Book. So please visit their website, www.pickabook.club. And there's someone who finally made this comment. It is Trio Ansar. Very valuable thoughts. Please share the video again. So Trio, not only the video is there, you can always replay it. It's on my LinkedIn, on my Facebook, and also on my YouTube. You are getting a self-help book, a good book to read, because you made a valuable comment here. So it's going to be 3 days of kind of a lockdown from tomorrow onwards till Monday. I hope everybody will stay safe and adhere to the government and health authorities' instructions. So Kanishka, thank you so very much. I'm actually planning to see you again maybe after some times and for another show. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we should put some few experts from the industry and have a a conversation like this with a lot of ideas. Thank you so very much for accepting my invitation for the benefit of our target audience.
Thank you, Amita. Thank you very much, and it was my pleasure being here with you. And I think we've been knowing for a long time.
Yeah,
and it's a real good time that I had with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good night and stay safe.